Thank you everyone for joining us today. We thought since we are being asked to glorify Lord Shiva and we were asked to give this class together, that it would be funny if I sat on my husband's lap while he glorified Lord Shiva. For those of you that don't get the, I'm not sitting on his lap for those of you that are looking at the screen, but for those of you that don't get the reference, there's actually a wonderful pastime in the Srimad Bhagavatam where Parvati was sitting on Lord Shiva's lap while he was extolling the glories of the Lord, and Chitraketu Maharaj saw this and laughing and jokingly criticized him for having his wife on his lap while he was speaking Krishna Katha, and then he actually was cursed. So because I was, don't want anyone to offend my husband, who is a great Vaishnava, I didn't sit on his lap.
We cannot compare ourselves to Lord Shiva and Parvati also.
Oh yeah, there's that.
There's a footnote in case you didn't know.
Yeah. So maybe that can be our headway. Why can't we compare ourselves to Lord Shiva and Parvati? Because I've got a lot of questions that my husband's going to answer because he's scholar.
The first thing is that.
Wait. Can I ask my question first?
I thought you just asked the question.
I didn't ask my question.
I thought you just said, why can't you compare yourself?
Oh, okay. Well, there's that question.
So I knew this wasn't going to go too well. So Lord Shiva is not like when you look at all the other devatas or the demigods, any one of us, any ordinary jiva can become one of them. We can become Indra, we can become Brahma, provided we do the appropriate Vedic rituals and perform the appropriate dharma for that, even up to Lord Brahma. But the jiva generally cannot become Lord Shiva. So Lord Shiva is not, although sometimes we use the word demigod, it's not an ordinary demigod, because no jiva can take the position of Lord Shiva, whereas the jiva can take up the position of any of the other devatas.
Thank you. That was a wonderful explanation. I have another challenging question. So in this verse, it actually says, Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, that Shiva is an incarnation of the Lord. And, Shiva Tattva is pretty far out. It's very confusing to me. It's hard for me. In one sense, we put him in the category of the demigods. And in another sense, here it's saying that, and the demigods are all jivas, right? Like you just explained.
Yeah.
And yet here Prabhupada's saying that he's an incarnation of the Lord. So, it can be a bit confusing. Is he a demigod? Is he a jiva? Is he an incarnation of Krishna? Is he all of the above? Is he none of the above? What is it?
So Krishna, when Krishna's main concerns are his devotees, when is Mother Yashoda going to feed me? When can I meet Srimati Radharani? And he preoccupies himself with his exchange with his devotees. But at the same time, someone else needs to do the dirty work. Someone else needs to take the garbage, like in our house. Someone needs to take the garbage out. Someone needs to clean the toilet. Someone needs to wash the dishes. So while they're cooking and you're making all those nice little flowers, decorations to the altar, someone has to clean the toilet. Someone has to clean the dishes. So I do that. So similarly, Krishna is engaging in very sweet pastimes with his devotees. So he delegates the other operations, such as destroying the material world, such as doing, taking charge of all those living beings in the mode of ignorance. And Shiva also involved in creation and preservation as well. It's not that he's not involved in those other aspects, but it's just that when Krishna wants to perform these other activities, when he wants to contact the external energy, then Krishna becomes Shiva. Lord Krishna himself does not directly contact his external energy. When he wants to do that, he manifests in the form of Lord Shiva. So in that way, just like that's why the verse is there in the Brahma Samhita, Khiram Yathata Divikara Vishesha Yogat Sanjayate Nahitada Pradagasti Hetu Shambutam Api Samupaiti Karyat Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So like milk and yogurt, they're the same in the sense that they're both dairy products, but they're also not the same in the sense that you can convert milk to yogurt, but you cannot convert yogurt back to milk.
I thought you were going to let me say the milk yogurt analogy.
No.
It's not fair. I don't know. He knows so much about Lord Shiva, and all I know is about milk and yogurt.
You can say it now.
So, well, you already explained it, that like it really, Prabhupada explains very nicely so many times that Shiva and Krishna are the same, just like milk and yogurt are the same. They're both dairy products, like you mentioned. But yogurt is a transformation of milk, and yogurt can never be turned into milk, just like Shiva can never become Krishna, but milk can be turned into yogurt. Krishna can manifest himself as Lord Shiva.
But does that answer the question? Did I, like why?
Of course.
Okay.
Well, I have another layer to that in terms of understanding of how what is Shiva's position. So in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami explains how Krishna has 64 qualities in full, and that the individual jiva can have up to, at most, 50 of those 64 qualities. Although the jiva will never have any of those qualities in full, because only Krishna can be the best at everything. So we can have those 50 qualities in some minute way, but we can never have more than 50 of those 64 qualities that Krishna has. But Shiva has 55 of those 64 qualities. There's an additional 5 qualities, I can't remember off the top of my head, that Lord Shiva possesses. I believe one of them is that his body is like immortal.
One of them is his body is immortal. Another one also that he is like Lord Vishnu. He's also omniscient in the sense that he knows what is the heart of every living entity. I don't really remember some of the others.
But and then like Vishnu can have up to 60, well, has, not that he can, but he has 60 out of the 64 qualities of Krishna. But then there's 4 qualities that are very special to Krishna, like that he plays the flute and he's the beloved of the residents of Vrindavan, things like that. And so it's interesting that Shiva, he doesn't have the full qualities that Krishna has, or even that Vishnu has, but he has more qualities than, oh, Gaur Sharan, put it in the chat. Nice. What are these extra 5 qualities that he's more than what the jiva has? Shiva is changeless, all cognizant, ever fresh, Satchidananda, possessing an eternal blissful body, and possessing all mystic perfections. Thank you for that. So I have another question. This one, I don't think this is going to be a surprise. Let's see if he can answer it. Is Shiva covered? Can he be covered by the mode of ignorance? Because he's in charge of the mode of ignorance. But can he actually be covered by, like, because we know that Krishna, it says all over the Bhagavatam, all over the Gita, that Krishna's in control and the source of the 3 modes of material nature, but never, ever for a second can ever become affected by the 3 modes of material nature. But what about Lord Shiva? Can he become?
So first of all, for his service, Lord Shiva, he, like what he mentioned, he takes charge of the mode of ignorance. And everyone is influenced by the mode of ignorance. But at the same time, he himself is not affected by the mode of ignorance, but he adopts it. Sometimes he accepts it for his service. because the destruction of the world requires some sort of anger to do it. If you don't have anger, you cannot, if you give someone who's extremely very peaceful, and he gives, and tell them, okay, can you please, destroy this house or whatever, they can't do it, because like it's difficult for them to do it. They need to get angry. So in the same way, Lord Shiva, he manifests some form of anger, and he kind of adopts it in his form and so forth, to carry out the service of destruction. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes sense, but I'm still wondering, you said that he adopts. You use the word adopt.
He's not affected by it, but he accepts it. He manifests it to perform his service.
But he isn't affected by it.
He doesn't, he's not like an ordinary jiva that becomes controlled by it.
I was contemplating this question and thinking of also the pastime of the churning of the milk ocean, and how Krishna sent Mohini Murti, right? And Shiva, I can't remember all the details, but like that he could never be attracted by the material energy at all. But then Krishna wanted to like humble him or something like that, right?
He wanted to see Lord Vishnu's form in the form of Mohini Murti. So he made a special request, and the Lord fulfilled the desire.
But then he himself became attracted to Mohini Murti,
yes.
And he became bewildered because he's never attracted by the material energy. But Mohini Murti is the female incarnation of Krishna, who is all beautiful and attractive. And then Shiva, although he had never been, attracted by a woman other than, of course, his own consort, which is, I guess, a form of spiritual relationship, not a love like this world.
Transcendental, humorous sort of relationship between Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu.
But then he became bewildered by how attracted he was by Mohini Murti.
Bewildered, and also he was proud of his being bewildered. He said, I consider for him that so-called humiliation of being bewildered, he took it as a great pride, because to be bewildered by Lord Vishnu and to have and to exchange this pastime with him, he saw it as a great honor, like a badge of honor. So he wasn't humiliated by it. He wasn't disgraced. He was actually very proud of having been bewildered by Lord Vishnu's form as Mohini Murti.
That's beautiful. That would make a nice prayer. Like, my dear Lord, I'm always bewildered by your material energy. Please bewilder me by your beauty. Bewilder me by your mercy. Anyways, why don't you talk a little bit about Lord Shiva's service to the living entities who are non-devotees?
So Lord Shiva, one of the things, it's a good time to glorify Lord Shiva also, because we're coming towards the end of the Navaratri, which is dedicated to his wife, Durga. So one of the features of Lord Shiva is that Lord Shiva does he's such a intimate friend and associate and devotee of Lord Vishnu. The Lord Vishnu delegates to him all the difficult tasks, like that no one else can do. So for example, sometimes you want to delegate some very confidential mission to someone that requires complete trust and responsibility. So you want to do it to you'll delegate that sort of service to someone who's very, very, that you really trust, and someone that you're very, very close to. So in the same way, Lord Shiva does services such as, for example, of course, we already talked about the destruction of the universe. He does it in a beautiful way, he does it by dancing. In one hand, he holds a fire of destruction, and on the other hand, he holds his drum, and he keeps beat with the drum, and then he dances and he destroys the universe in such a beautiful way. And he also sometimes performs other services, like he comes as Shankaracharya, to bewilder the atheist, and to preach Mayavad philosophy. There's a confidential reason why he had to do that. But there is also the delegated Lord Shiva during the churning of the ocean of milk. After Lord Vishnu had performed various functions by helping the demigods, he came as Kurma, he came as, for the churning of the ocean to take place, where the Mount Meru could be churned on the back of him. Then on top, he was supporting the mountain. So in many ways, he was doing all those things. But then there's one point after doing all that, when they started churning the ocean, the first thing that came out was the poison called Hala Hala. And the demigods approached Lord Vishnu to save them again. But Lord Vishnu said, no, for this you go to Lord Shiva. So again, he gives the difficult, like the so-called, the dirty job in one sense, and delegates it to very confidential devotee Lord Shiva. And of course, there's another very interesting role Lord Shiva also takes, in that he's also known as Bhutanath. I think the Srimad Bhagavatam actually uses the word Bhutan, not somewhere in the verse we just read. So anyway, there are living entities in this world who have absolutely no shelter. Like sometimes we see, even people who are like, some bad people, criminals, they have some shelter, they have their gangs, they have their families, and so on and so forth. But but the others, like the bhutas, the ghosts, the pisachas, the devils, the rakshasas, the man-eaters, some of them, they have no shelter at all. They are, like no one else. They're completely rejected from everybody else, from every other society, and from every other like sort of a community. So to all these hopeless beings, Lord Shiva takes care of them. He gives them his association so they can gradually benefit, and they can gradually make spiritual progress back to becoming ultimately becoming devotees of Lord Vishnu. So that is his nature of his great compassion. Lord Shiva, being the greatest Vaishnava, is also the most compassionate. So he offers shelters to all those hopeless beings. And some of these beings sometimes, like Vikrasura, and sometimes they also approach him to sort of destroy him, or sometimes they approach him to even take over his wife. But Lord Shiva is so compassionate. These are beings that nobody else wants to hang out with. People want to keep a far distance from these crazy beings. But Lord Shiva is so compassionate that he gives them shelter, takes care of them, and nourishes them.
And even satisfies their desires.
Yeah. He satisfies these desires, and he's also like Mr. Contradiction. Like he satisfies the desires very easily. He gets angered very easily. All the yogis worship him. But at the same time, yogis means you have to be celibate. At the same time, he's also a householder. The householders worship him. The whole universe belongs to him, but he doesn't have a roof under his head. He lives on Mount Kailash, so he's got very contradictory features.
Incredible.
Yeah, he's the father of the universe. For the Lord Shiva is actually considered to be the father of the material universe, and Lord Vishnu is the father of both the spiritual and material universe. Lord Shiva is specifically in charge of the material universe, along with his wife Parvati.
Incredible. Yeah, Shiva Tattva is like mind-blowing. It's very difficult to wrap one's head around. They say, I think it's said that even more complex than Vishnu Tattva or even Guru Tattva is Shiva Tattva, trying to understand the philosophy of who is Lord Shiva. So anything else on that matter?
No, I think okay. I just wanted to highlight the compassionate nature of Lord Shiva, and also how he's given all the difficult tasks to do by Lord Krishna or Lord Vishnu.
So you talked a lot about how Lord Shiva interacts with those living entities who are not actually trying to approach Krishna, who are not on the path of bhakti, and how he gradually elevates them and simultaneously will fulfill their nefarious desires, whereas Krishna isn't so inclined to do those things. Krishna, if someone comes to Krishna asking, which one can do, but asking for some material desire, if it's not actually good for one's spiritual life, Krishna won't grant it. But Shiva actually will grant those things that aren't good for one's spiritual life. But then he increases people's faith in the Vedic process, and and because Lord Shiva is Vaishnavanam Yatashambhu, he's the greatest, he's considered the greatest devotee of Krishna, then by them having faith in Lord Shiva and worshiping Lord Shiva, they're actually making spiritual advancement because they're worshiping an incredibly great devotee of Lord Shiva. So I know someone's going to ask the question, wait, Shiva is called the greatest devotee. I thought Radharani was the greatest devotee. And someone else is going to be like, wait, I thought Hanuman was the greatest. How is it possible? You know, when actually Shiva did worship Srimati Radharani. So then who actually is the greatest devotee? Well, it's explained by our acharyas that there can be more than one greatest devotee. Try to wrap your brain around that one. But Lord Shiva is considered amongst those that are titled as the greatest devotee. And we're seeing all these wonderful questions. We'll get to questions at the end. We promise to leave plenty of time for questions at the end. Because I have a lot of questions about Lord Shiva as well. So I was thinking it'd be nice also to cover these aspects of Shiva as how, in terms of how he is also relevant in our lives, those of us that are trying to approach Krishna as his devotees, those of us who are trying to become pure devotees of Lord Shiva's Lord and Master, who is Krishna. And also what Lord Shiva's relationship is with Krishna, which is complex and very sweet in many ways. I mean, you already brought up the point of how he takes on as a service to Krishna these very not so desirable services, right? Like sometimes we complain about having to do the needful, having to serve in ways that like taking out the trash, washing the toilet, things like that. And that's like all Shiva does. But I mean, that's like a lot of what he does. And he doesn't complain. He does it with great enthusiasm and service to Krishna. So we can take inspiration from Shiva's mood. And then also think of, you brought up the pastime of how he drinks poison, also during the churning the ocean of milk pastime as a service. And I was in Mayapur many years ago. Radhanath Swami gave an incredible lecture about this pastime, glorifying endlessly the glories of Lord Shiva. And the point that really struck me from that lecture, that really sunk into my heart, was how Lord Shiva is so willing to take on suffering for the benefit of others, and how this is one of the greatest qualities that gives him this title of being the greatest devotee of the Lord. Because that's really like the quality, this compassion, not just like feelings of compassion, but this willingness to actually go through difficulties for the benefits of others. And so Shiva drank that poison for the benefit both of the demons and the demigods at the time. And that's just really incredible. It's another one of Shiva's qualities that we can worship and somehow pray to be able to imbibe. And it's interesting how a couple of things about Lord Shiva and his relationship with Krishna. I was reading yesterday how, I mean, we hear so much in the Bhagavatam. It's nice when you see so many verses, different people glorifying Krishna and Vishnu, and again you hear this glorification of how Krishna's lotus feet are worshipped by the demigods like Brahma, Indra, and Shiva. And so that's it's like very straightforward that they are all devotees of Krishna. There's no confusion there of who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. because Shiva is meditating on serving the lotus feet of Krishna. And I was reading yesterday how, again in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, how Shiva reacts to hearing the beautiful sound of Krishna's flute. And there's actually a couple different explanations in the same text, that sometimes Shiva becomes very grave and stunned and bewildered. Like such a great personality like Shiva actually becomes bewildered when he hears the sound of Krishna's flute. And then in a few chapters later, it explained in terms of describing the different qualities that a devotee goes through when they're actually on the stage above, the different like symptoms of ecstasy that one experiences. One of them being like uncontrollable loud crying. And in that, and as a description example of that was given the example of Lord Shiva, of how when he, specifically in relation to hearing Krishna's flute, when he hears the sound of Krishna's flute, he sometimes starts crying so loudly, so uncontrollably, that it's said that he, just by hearing his loud cries, those living entities in the mode of ignorance, those demoniac living entities, all become liberated. I mean, that's incredible, right? So he's so merciful to really liberating those of us who are controlled by the lower modes. So we can pray to Shiva, following in the footsteps of the gopis, because the gopis, he's called Gopeshwar Mahadev because he's the worshipable deity of the gopis, actually. Not the worshipable Lord, but the worshipable deity of the gopis, because they approached Lord Shiva specifically and pure, with desires of pure bhakti, to have Krishna as their husband. They weren't asking anything material. They were going to Shiva, please, you grant benedictions very easily. And they did great austerities to try to please Lord Shiva. And they were asking him that they could have Krishna as their husband. So we can follow in the footsteps of the gopis, not necessarily to imitate and ask that Krishna become our husband, but to follow in the footsteps in terms of, praying to Lord Shiva to help us in our spiritual advancement, and some of the ways that are recommended by our acharyas to approach Lord Shiva is specifically, I'm thinking of how when we visit the holy Dham, what's it called? He's called Kshetrapala. In Mayapur and in Vrindavan, there's deities of Lord Shiva there, and it's considered that Lord Shiva is the guardian of the holy Dham.
Also, Jagannath Puri, also generally it is said that before one goes to the Jagannath temple, one is supposed to go to Lord Shiva's temple. I think it's the Lingeshwara temple in Pale Basin.
Specifically because Lord Shiva is the protector of the Dham as Kshetrapal. And because we can physically buy a plane ticket, we can, physically dump our material body into the atmosphere of the holy Dham, but our minds and our hearts could be very far from actually entering into that internal space of really being present where Krishna is performing his pastimes eternally. And it's considered that there's this covering of the Dham that one can get caught in. And we're encouraged to actually, when we go to any holy Dham, to take shelter of Lord Shiva, praying that he removes this covering, although we may be unqualified to enter the Dham, that he removes this covering, and we really beg for his mercy that we can actually come in contact with the real Dham and really go deep into our bhajan and to our hearing and chanting and really being present with the Lord and the Holy Dham. So in Mayapur, there's deity. You're supposed to go before, like it's supposed to be one of the first things that you do when you get to the Dham is to take shelter of Lord Shiva. So it's explained that Lord Shiva really has the capacity to give people their material desires. And because he's a pure devotee of the Lord, we can also take shelter of him asking for pure bhakti, because he himself became, I can't remember the whole pastime, we don't really have time for it, but he himself was such a devotee that he not only protected the Dham, but he wanted to be a part of the Rasa Leela pastimes. And Krishna rewarded him with the body of a gopi so that he could also dance with Krishna. So it's just kind of mind-blowing, the different facets of Lord Shiva's personality and how he's got like Dasya Ras and a lot of Dasya Ras, but also that he's there dancing with Krishna in the Rasa dance.
Yeah, I mean, he also specifically serves Lord Ram in Dasya Ras through his incarnation as Hanuman. So there's a connection between Lord Shiva and Hanuman as well.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool. So we'll finish up really quick with a really sweet pastime, and then we'll try to answer some of your questions. So it's one time in Satya Yuga, this is in the Navadvip Dham Mahatmya by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that in the Satya Yuga, one day Parvati saw Lord Shiva dancing and crying in ecstasy, shouting the name Gauranga, Gauranga, Gauranga. And Parvati was like, what is going on with my husband? And she was asking him, I mean, I've seen you dance the dance of destruction so many times, but this is different. And my heart is melting upon hearing the name Gauranga coming from your mouth. Tell me, who is this Gauranga? And Shiva said that Gauranga is actually the Krishna coming with the mood of Srimati Radharani, that he will come in Kali Yuga. And if you worship him, you will go into the most incredible ecstasy. So then from that day on, Parvati began in deep meditation, worshiping and chanting the names of Gauranga. And then Gauranga manifested before her. And it's actually said that Shiva said that when he was describing the glories of Gauranga to Parvati, he said, I myself will leave, what's the place that he lives again? Kashi?
Kashi.
Yeah. So that Kashi is like the general dwelling, living place of Lord Shiva. But he said, I will leave Kashi and go to reside in Mayapur, where Gauranga will come, because he's such an ecstatic incarnation of the Lord. And so Parvati began to worship Gauranga, and Gauranga manifested before her, and she took shelter of him and was lamenting, revealing her heart. It's said that you put this rule in place that wherever there is Krishna, Maya cannot be there, and I am Maya. That is my service, is to be, this Maya energy is the service to you. But then that means I can never see you. I'll never be able to see your pastimes of Gauranga. And he said, don't worry, because you're always there present in my pastimes as Yoga Maya, as the potency that helps those devotees to, like Mother Yashoda and the cowherd boys and the gopis, to forget that Krishna is God, so that they can have deeper loving relationships with him. So that's a little bit about the ecstasies and bewilderment of Lord Shiva's personality. So let's take some of these questions that we have.
Or anyone else can also, I think they can unmute themselves and ask a question too.
Well, let's first take some of these questions. So this question is the Atma not also Satchidananda? I think that's referring to how one of the qualities of Shiva that's beyond the quality of the Jiva is that he's Satchidananda. But this I think is referring to how his body is eternally Satchidananda, whereas we voluntarily take on material bodies, unfortunately. So right now we have our material bodies, although our souls are eternally full of knowledge and bliss.
We just covered over by lust.
Yeah, but Lord Shiva, his body, like even because he's in charge of the utter devastations that happen, in cycles, his body is never ever destroyed and was never created. So his body is Satchidananda. So that hopefully that answers that question. Why don't you take the next one? Oops, where are we?
Yeah, Lord Shiva is ever fresh. The same thing. Lord Shiva's body is ever fresh. So his body is is always fresh. It's eternal, because our bodies are not. Okay. Yeah, I think the other question we already talked about, but Lord Shiva is the Jivas can take the post of up to Lord Brahma, but Lord Shiva's post is a unique position. There's a specific tattva that's just dedicated to him. He's not Jiva tattva. He's also not Vishnu tattva.
He's got his own tattva to himself. That's it's like that doesn't say enough about what a personality he is. What about Ananda Bihari's question? Why were demigods still losing after Vishnu and Shiva themselves helped them get the nectar?
Honestly, I really don't know. I don't know. I know that sometimes a lot Shiva's presence creates, like in the Mahabharata war, in the the war's 18 days, but after the 13th day, everyone was following all the codes of Kshatriya etiquette, all the rules of what Kshatriya is supposed to follow. They stop fighting in the evening. They don't kill someone who's in a yoga position or ran away from the battle. But when Lord Shiva came, things changed. He sped up the destruction. There was basically no holds barred. All rules and regulations abandoned, and he kind of sped up the whole process. So my point is that just because Lord Shiva is present, it doesn't mean that the demigods necessarily win. Sometimes he can even empower the demons also. So it's difficult to answer the question other than by what I just said, for me at least.
I think also another perspective could be that there's times when Krishna might help us a little bit, but then he wants to see us put some more effort and really take shelter on a deeper level. So that he doesn't, and that Krishna and Shiva, well, I guess I really honestly don't understand Shiva as much. I haven't studied his personality as much as I've tried to study Vishnu's personality. But that I know that Krishna, he'll let people get away with things. He doesn't always help us the way that we want to be helped, but he does what's best for us. So that's one perspective. And also that he'll, even with the demigods, he lets them, and the demons, he lets them get away with their mischief for some time and then pulls the rug out from underneath them, right? Like even Lord Brahma, he let Brahma have like an entire year where Brahma took the cowherd boys and cowherd. So Brahma thought he was getting away with it, I guess in Brahma's time it was like a day or something like that. So